This story is titled, Mom Took My Cheating Ex-Girlfriend's Side, but after she scammed her and she needed my help, she wants to reconcile. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Okay, so before I get into all the drama, you guys need some background info to understand just how messed up this whole situation is. And trust me, it gets pretty wild. I, 28 male, grew up with just my mom after my dad passed away in a construction accident when I was 2. He was working on some high-rise project downtown, faulty scaffolding or something. I don't really know all the details since I was too young, and mom doesn't like talking about it. The company settled out of court, which gave us enough money to keep our small house, but mom still had to work her ass off to keep us going. She worked as a dental assistant during the week and picked up weekend shifts at this local diner called Murphy's. Changed the name for obvious reasons. I remember spending a lot of weekends doing homework in one of the corner booths while she worked. The owner, Mike, was pretty cool about it. Would always slip me free chocolate milkshakes when mom wasn't looking LOL. Growing up, it was always just us against the world, you know? Like, we had this super tight bond that most of my friends didn't get. They'd complain about their parents being strict or whatever, but my mom was different. She was more like a best friend who also happened to make sure I didn't screw up my life. She'd help me with school projects until 2 a.m., came to every single one of my boring-ass coding competitions in high school. Yeah, I was that kid. And even learned basic programming stuff just so we could talk about my interests. The only thing she was really strict about was dating. Every time I'd show interest in someone during high school or early college, she'd be like, focus on your career first. Relationships can wait. And to be honest, she wasn't wrong. I ended up getting into software engineering. I know, typical Reddit career choice. And landed this pretty sweet gig at a tech startup right out of college. We make project management software. Nothing super exciting, but the pay is good, and the work-life balance is decent. I did date a couple girls before all this went down. There was Amy in college, lasted about 3 months before we realized we had literally nothing in common except that we both liked The Office. Then there was Rebecca from my first job. That ended when she got a position in Seattle, and neither of us wanted to do long distance. My mom was polite to them, but never really got invested, you know? Looking back, I should have seen that as a red flag when things were different with Jessica. So yeah, by 26 I was doing pretty well for myself. Had my own apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but at least I wasn't sharing a bathroom with 3 other dudes anymore, was making decent money, and had even started helping mom out financially. Got her a new car for her birthday. Nothing fancy, just a used Honda Civic, but you should have seen her face. She cried for like an hour and then hung the photo of us with the car everywhere. Like, everywhere. Her phone background, her desk at work, even got it framed for the living room LMAO. My grandparents, mom's side, live about 3 hours away and they're pretty old school. They're the type who still read actual newspapers and think Facebook is too complicated. They always wanted mom to remarry after dad died, but she was like, nah, me and my boy are good. They mean well, but can be pretty judgmental sometimes. This becomes important later, trust me. I was working a lot of overtime back then, trying to get this big project launched. We were updating our entire back-end system, boring technical stuff. I'll spare you the details. And I was spending way too many nights at the office. That's actually how I met Jessica. She worked in HR and would always be there late too, handling hiring stuff for our expansion. Quick side note, my mom had finally started dating again around this time. Nothing serious, just coffee dates from this dating app my cousin helped her set up. I was really happy for her, you know? She'd spent so many years just focused on me. It was nice seeing her do something for herself. I should probably mention that I had this thing where I'd always call mom on my lunch break. Started back when I first got the job and just became our thing. We'd chat about random stuff, her weird dental patients, office drama, what we were having for dinner. Sometimes if I was busy, I'd just text, but we never went a workday without checking in. Jessica used to say it was sweet how close we were. God, writing all this out is making me realize how much things have changed. It's like looking at photos from another life or something. Everything seemed so normal back then. Mom and I were closer than ever, my career was taking off, and I thought I had everything figured out. But yeah, that's the setup you need to understand why everything that happened next hit so hard. The whole situation with Jessica and my mom, man, sometimes I still can't believe it actually happened. Like if someone had told me back then how things would play out, I would have laughed in their face. So this is where Jessica comes into the picture. And looking back now, there were so many red flags that I was too dumb to see. Like, billboard-sized red flags with flashing neon lights. But you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20 or whatever. I first noticed her in the office kitchen around 9 p.m. one night. Yeah, our startup had that whole cool office kitchen thing going on. Cold brew on tap, fancy snacks, the works. I was making my third coffee of the night, trying to fix this bug that was driving me crazy, and she was microwaving what looked like the saddest desk dinner ever. One of those frozen diet meals that are like 90% sadness and 10% actual food. We got talking about how much working late sucked, and she mentioned she was in HR dealing with all the paperwork for our company's expansion. She was actually really funny, made this whole joke about how she was probably violating some HR policy by telling me how much she hated HR paperwork. Looking back, that should have been red flag number one. She had no problem breaking professional boundaries. Jessica was, well, imagine if someone copy-pasted an Instagram influencer into real life. Always perfectly put together. Even at 9 p.m. after a full day of work. Designer everything. She had this thing where she'd name-drop luxury brands but then be like, oh, but I got it on sale to seem relatable. Should have been red flag number two. She was living way beyond an HR person's salary. But I just thought she was good with money or something. Yeah, I know. I'm an idiot. We started having lunch together, and she'd always insist on these fancy places nearby. When I suggested the regular sandwich place I usually went to, she'd make these little comments like, oh, you're so down to earth, in this weird tone. But then she'd laugh and touch my arm, and honestly, I was just shocked someone like her would be interested in someone like me. Here's where it gets relevant to the whole mom situation. About a month after we started dating, Jessica mentions she's transferring to our company's other office across town. She said it was because she wanted to grow in her career, and the marketing department there had an opening. She made this whole thing about how she was telling me because she wanted to be completely transparent about everything. Red flag number three right there. Who makes that big of a deal about being honest unless they're trying to hide something? But the biggest thing was how she was with my mom. Most girls I dated were polite to my mom, but kept their distance. Jessica? She went all in. First time she met my mom, she brought this fancy bottle of wine and these macarons from some expensive French bakery downtown. She'd noticed the France fridge magnet in my apartment. Mom's dream was always to visit Paris, and just happened to remember. My mom was impressed right from the start. Jessica would ask her all about her work, her hobbies, everything. She even started helping mom with her social media presence for her little Etsy shop, where she sold homemade candles. Within weeks, they were texting each other cute dog videos and planning lunch dates without me. My mom would say stuff like, she's the one, and don't mess this up. About 3 months in, Jessica started staying over at my place most nights. She gradually moved her stuff in, first just a toothbrush, then some clothes, then suddenly half my closet was designer brands I couldn't pronounce. She was still paying rent on her own place, though, which she said was because she valued her independence. Should have wondered how she afforded 2 places on an HR salary. The real weird stuff started after she transferred to the other office. She'd talk about this marketing director, Mark, all the time. It was always, Mark had this amazing idea, or Mark's presentation was so impressive. But whenever I'd seem bothered by it, she'd invite my mom over for dinner or plan some cute family thing, and I'd feel like a jealous idiot for worrying. She even started joining our weekly family dinners at mom's place. You know those Sunday dinners that are like a sacred family tradition? Yeah, those. She'd bring fancy wines, help cook, or pretend to. She mainly just took photos for Instagram, and charmed the hell out of everyone. My grandparents met her once when they visited and wouldn't shut up about how I'd finally found a good one. 8 months in, she had basically become part of the family. Mom would call her for advice about work stuff, include her in family group chats, even started planning a girls' trip to Paris together. Jessica would send Mom these long, heartfelt messages about how she'd never had a real mother figure before. Her parents lived in another state, apparently, though now I wonder if that was even true. Looking back, it was like she was building this whole separate relationship with my family as a backup plan. Like she was securing her position so deeply that when everything went to shit, people would be more likely to believe her over me. And boy, did that plan work perfectly. I guess I should mention that during all this, our actual relationship was fine. Like, nothing spectacular, but nothing obviously wrong either. We had the normal couple fights about dumb stuff. Me working too much, her spending too much on things we didn't need. But there was always something off that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Like when she'd get really intense about knowing my phone password for emergency purposes, or how she'd screenshot our text conversations to save cute memories. Quick disclaimer. Writing this part is honestly making my blood boil all over again. But you guys need to know how it all went down. So remember that Mark guy I mentioned? The marketing director Jessica wouldn't shut up about? Yeah, well, turns out there was a lot more going on there than just professional admiration or whatever BS she'd been feeding me. It was a regular Thursday night, and Jessica had gone out for what she called a team building dinner with her marketing department. These had been happening more and more frequently over the past few months. She'd always come home late, talking about all the amazing networking opportunities and how Mark was really helping her career growth. I was up late working on this huge project deadline. We were launching a new feature the next week, and everything was broken. Typical software dev stuff. Around 3 a.m., I hear her key in the door. She stumbles in, clearly wasted, which was weird because she usually played it pretty cool at work events. Her makeup was all messed up, and she was carrying her heels instead of wearing them. I asked if she was okay, thinking maybe she just had too much to drink and needed some water. Instead, she looks at me with this weird smile and goes, "I need to tell you something because keeping it in is killing me." Now, I'm thinking maybe she got a promotion or something. Nope. She just straight up says, "I've been sleeping with Mark for the past 3 months. He gets me in a way you never could." I literally froze. Like my brain just stopped working for a solid minute. She kept talking, saying stuff about how Mark was more ambitious and understood her goals in life, and some other corporate buzzword, BS. The worst part? She wasn't even crying or acting guilty. She was saying all this like she was giving some kind of HR presentation about company policy changes. Remember how I said she'd been screenshotting our conversations to save memories? Well, turns out she'd been selectively saving certain texts and edited conversations for months. She had this whole folder on her phone titled Backup. Found that out later. I just sat there on the couch, trying to process everything while she kept talking about how it just happened and how she never meant to hurt anyone. Then she had the audacity to say, "I still want us to be friends, though. You're such a nice guy." Yeah, because that's exactly what you want to hear from someone who just admitted to cheating on you, that you're a nice guy. The thing that really gets me is what she said next. She goes, "Your mom doesn't have to know the whole truth. We can just say we grew apart." That's when it hit me. She had been planning this whole thing. She wasn't confessing because she felt guilty. She was trying to control the narrative. I finally found my voice and told her to get out. She tried to argue, saying it was 3 a.m. and she was drunk, but I wasn't having it. I started packing up her stuff that was in the living room, all those designer clothes and expensive bags she'd slowly moved in. She kept trying to talk to me, following me around the apartment saying stuff like, "You're overreacting, and we can work through this." The crazy thing is, while I was throwing her stuff into bags, she was texting someone. I assumed it was Mark or maybe an Uber, but nope. Found out later she was texting my mom, already starting her damage control before she even left the apartment. I told her she had until tomorrow to get the rest of her stuff out, and that I'd leave it with the building security if I didn't want to see her face. She tried to hug me goodbye, like WTF, but I just opened the door and waited for her to leave. As soon as she was gone, I just sat on my couch staring at nothing for like 2 hours. I couldn't even cry or be angry. I was just empty. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed, all those late nights at the office, the constant texts, how she'd always turn her phone face down when we were together. I thought about calling my mom right then, but it was like 5 a.m. at this point. Plus, Mom loved her so much. I needed time to figure out how to break it to her gently. Guess that was another mistake, because it gave Jessica time to spin her story first. The really messed up part? Later, I found out that this wasn't even a drunk confession. She and Mark had been planning to go public with their relationship at work, so she needed to clear the path first. The whole drunk confession thing was just theater. She even went to work the next day like nothing happened. Found that out from a coworker who saw her and Mark having lunch together, looking pretty cozy. I ended up calling in sick to work the next day. Couldn't deal with the thought of maybe running into her, or having to explain to my team why I looked like I hadn't slept, which I hadn't. I spent the morning changing all my passwords and trying to figure out what to do next. So there I am, sitting in my apartment the next day, still trying to process everything when my phone starts blowing up. It's my mom calling. I actually felt relieved at first because I needed her support. Boy, was I wrong. I answer the phone and immediately get hit with, "How could you do this to her?" My mom is literally screaming. I've never heard her this angry. Not even when I accidentally formatted her laptop and lost all her photos that one time. Thank God for cloud backup. I'm sitting there completely confused, trying to get a word in, but she just keeps going. Apparently, Jessica had shown up at her house early that morning, crying her eyes out, with proof that I had been cheating on her for months. She had screenshots of conversations, pictures, everything. Here's the really messed up part. She had actually edited our old conversations. Remember how she always insisted on having my phone password for emergencies? Yeah, she had gone through my phone while I was sleeping, taken screenshots of random conversations with female coworkers, then edited them to make them look suspicious. She even photoshopped timestamps and dates. My mom was like, Jessica showed me everything. The texts, the pictures, even your dating app profile. I didn't even have a dating app profile. Apparently, she made a fake one with my photos. The worst part? She had somehow managed to edit photos of her and Mark to make it look like they were just normal work meetings, while making innocent coffee meetings I'd had with coworkers look shady. I tried to explain what really happened, told my mom about the 3 a.m. confession, about Mark, about everything. But she wasn't having any of it. She kept saying stuff like, Jessica would never do that, and I know her, she's not a liar. The same woman who raised me to always tell the truth was calling me a liar. Then she hit me with the nuclear option. I'm taking you out of my will. I won't have a cheater for a son. Like, what? The will thing didn't even bother me. Okay, maybe a little. But the fact that she believed Jessica over her own son? That hurt worse than the actual cheating. It gets better. Worse? She had already called my grandparents. They left me these long voicemails about how disappointed they were in me. My grandma was crying in one of them, saying she didn't raise her daughter to raise a son like this. Thanks, Grandma. I found out later that Jessica had spent hours at my mom's house that morning, showing her all this evidence she had collected. She even made up this whole story about how she had tried to make it work, but couldn't handle my constant cheating. She told my mom she was only telling her because she saw her as a mother figure and couldn't bear to lie to her. The really twisted thing? Jessica kept up her relationship with my mom. They still went out for coffee, still texted, still had their little shopping trips. Jessica was playing the role of the heartbroken victim perfectly. She even convinced my mom to help her move her stuff out of my apartment because she didn't feel safe around me anymore. My mom changed the locks on her house. Like, actually changed the locks. On the house that I partly paid for. Remember that Honda Civic? Yeah, I was also helping with her mortgage. She blocked my number, blocked me on Facebook, everything. 26 years of being the closest mother-son duo you could imagine, and it all went up in smoke because of some edited screenshots. I tried everything to prove my innocence. I reached out to my coworkers to verify my whereabouts on days Jessica claimed I was out cheating. I even tried to get IT at work to recover original versions of some messages she'd edited, but Mom wouldn't even look at any of it. She just kept saying, Jessica showed me everything I need to see. The only person at work who really tried to help was Jake from IT. He could tell something was off about those screenshots Jessica was spreading around, but proving they were edited was another thing entirely. She had done a really thorough job covering her tracks. You know what the worst part was? Finding out that Jessica was still going to all our regular family events. Thanksgiving? She was there. Christmas? Yep. My mom's birthday? She posted pictures of them together at some fancy restaurant downtown. Meanwhile, I spent the holidays alone in my apartment, ordering takeout and trying to figure out how my life had imploded so spectacularly. I won't lie, I was in a pretty dark place during this time. Seeing your mom choose your cheating ex over you does something to your head, you know? I threw myself into work, picked up extra projects, anything to keep my mind off the fact that I'd lost both my girlfriend and my mom in the span of 24 hours. So about 8 months into my exile from the family, yeah, that's what I'm calling it, I started noticing some weird posts on my mom's Facebook. She was sharing all these crypto investment things and talking about financial freedom and being your own boss. Now, this is a woman who still writes checks at the grocery store and thinks Instagram is too complicated. Major red flag. I tried to check what was going on, but she still had me blocked. Had to make a fake account just to see her public posts. Not proud of that, but I was worried. That's when I saw she was tagging Jessica in all these posts about some crypto investment scheme. Stuff like, so grateful to have such a knowledgeable financial advisor in the family. And, amazing returns this month thanks to it, Jessica. Side note, Jessica's entire Instagram had transformed from basic influencer stuff to full-on crypto guru aesthetic. All those designer clothes were now business casual, and she was posting those weird inspirational quotes about building wealth and investing in yourself. You know the type. Through the office grapevine, shout out to Jake in IT who kept me updated, I found out Jessica had actually quit her marketing job a few months back to focus on her investment business full-time. Mark apparently got transferred to another office around the same time. Convenient, right? I was honestly scared for my mom, but what could I do? She still wouldn't talk to me, and anyone I tried to warn just told me I was jealous of Jessica's success. Even my grandparents were apparently getting in on this investment thing. Then one day, around the 1 year mark of this whole mess, I get this frantic call from an unknown number. It's my mom. She's crying so hard I can barely understand her, but I catch phrases like all gone and life savings, and my stomach just drops. Turns out, Jessica had been running this elaborate crypto scam. She'd start people off investing small amounts, show them fake returns, then convince them to invest more and more. My mom had put in almost 40,000 over the past few months, her entire savings, plus some money borrowed from my grandparents. Money that, surprise, surprise, was now completely gone. The way Jessica did it was actually pretty clever, in an evil genius kind of way. She'd gained everyone's trust over the past year by being the poor, wronged girlfriend who still cared about the family. She'd help my mom with tech stuff, show her how to use payment apps, set up digital banking, basically got access to everything while pretending to be helpful. She'd even set up this whole fake investment portal where people could log in and see their returns growing. Apparently, she'd done this to quite a few other people too, not just my family. Total take was somewhere around $200,000 from what I heard later. But here's where it gets good. When my mom finally confronted her about not being able to withdraw any money, Jessica was drunk. Actually drunk this time. Not fake drunk like when she confessed to cheating. She just broke down, started rambling about how she never meant for it to go this far, how Mark had dumped her after getting his promotion and moving offices, how she needed money to maintain her lifestyle. And then, in what I can only assume was a drunken guilt spiral, she admitted everything. The cheating, the fake screenshots, all of it. She even showed my mom the original unedited versions she'd kept. Guess she wasn't as thorough about covering her tracks as we thought. My mom just sat there in Jessica's apartment, watching her ex-future daughter-in-law sob about how she'd screwed up her life, realizing that she'd chosen this person over her own son. Finding out you've been scammed out of your life savings is one thing. Finding out you also wrongly accused your only child and ruined your relationship with him? That's a whole other level of awful. The next morning, Jessica had apparently sobered up and tried to backtrack, but it was too late. My mom had recorded parts of her confession on her phone. Guess she finally figured out how to use technology when it really mattered. She went straight to the police about the investment scam. But you want to know the really messed up part? Jessica had already emptied her accounts and bought a one-way ticket to somewhere in Southeast Asia. By the time the police got involved, she was long gone. Apparently, she'd been planning her exit strategy for weeks. All those investment seminars she was supposedly attending? Yeah, those were her slowly moving money around and setting up her escape. She'd even subleased her apartment without telling anyone. So after Jessica pulled her disappearing act, everything kind of exploded. My mom was dealing with the police, the bank, and trying to figure out just how screwed she was financially. But there was also this whole other mess. Our relationship. The first time she tried to contact me after everything went down, I actually ignored her calls. Petty? Maybe. But after a year of being blocked and treated like dirt, I wasn't exactly rushing to answer. She left these voicemails, though. God, they were hard to listen to. Just full-on sobbing, apologizing, saying she didn't deserve to be my mom. Eventually, she showed up at my apartment. No warning, just standing there at my door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, looking like she hadn't slept in days. I almost shut the door in her face, but she looked so broken. Like this wasn't the strong woman who raised me. This was someone whose entire world had just imploded. She had this folder with her. Inside was everything. The original screenshots Jessica had shown her, the edited ones, bank statements showing all the money she'd lost, the police report, everything. She laid it all out on my coffee table and just broke down. I failed you, she kept saying. I failed as a mother. I failed as a human being. She told me how Jessica had played her perfectly, how she'd spent the past year bragging to everyone about her amazing future daughter-in-law while her actual son was suffering alone. She said she'd understand if I never forgave her. Here's the thing, though. Watching your mom literally on her knees begging for forgiveness should probably make you feel something, right? Anger, sadness, satisfaction, anything. But I felt nothing, like completely empty. I just stood there while she cried, and all I could think was, who is this person? The worst part was when she started talking about all the family events she'd invited Jessica to instead of me. Holidays, birthdays, even my cousin's wedding. She'd chosen my cheating ex over me every single time. And now she was sitting in my living room expecting, what? For everything to go back to normal? You know what really got me? She'd already told my grandparents everything, and they were too ashamed to call me themselves. They sent a letter, in 2025, saying they were deeply sorry for believing Jessica's lies. Like, thanks, I guess? That letter's still sitting unopened on my desk, BTW. Mom's trying really hard now. Like, really hard. She calls every day, sometimes multiple times. Sends me pictures of random things that remind her of me. Keeps asking if she can come cook my favorite meals or help clean my apartment. Classic mom guilt-fixing behavior. She even set up a shared Google Drive folder with copies of all the evidence against Jessica, the police reports, the bank statements, screenshots of her investment scam website, everything. As if proving Jessica was a criminal would somehow make up for not believing me in the first place. The financial stuff is a mess. She's probably never getting that money back. Had to take out a second mortgage on her house. The one I helped her buy, remember? She's back to working weekends at the diner at 58. Seeing her in that waitress uniform again after all these years. That actually did make me feel something. Not sure what, but something. Last week, she asked if we could start doing Sunday dinners again. Just the two of us, like we used to before all this Jessica stuff. I said I needed time. She tried to hide it, but I saw her face just crumble. Old me would have given in. Said yes, just to make her feel better. But I'm not that person anymore. It's weird. I always thought if I got proof that I was right, if everyone finally knew the truth, it would fix everything. But it doesn't work like that, does it? The trust is just gone. Every time my mom calls, there's this voice in the back of my head saying, "She didn't believe you once, she could do it again." I know she's my mom. I know she was manipulated. I know she lost everything too. But every time she reaches out, I just feel tired, like bone deep exhausted. Everyone keeps telling me I need to forgive her, that she's suffered enough, that family is family. But they didn't spend a year being treated like they didn't exist. So Reddit, should I forgive her? Final update. All right, this is probably going to be my last update on this whole situation. It's been about 3 months since everything with Jessica blew up, and 6 months since I first posted about this mess. First off, thanks for all the support and advice, even the harsh stuff. Special shout out to the people who shared similar stories. Honestly helped me feel less crazy about everything. So here's where things stand. Jessica's still in the wind. The police say they've tracked her to somewhere in Bali, but international fraud cases are complicated and slow. Turns out she's done this before. There's actually a whole Facebook group of her victims now. Fun times. My mom? That's more complicated. She's still trying really hard. Almost too hard, if that makes sense. Like, she'll text me random photos of me as a kid that she finds, or send DoorDash to my apartment because she remembered I liked that sushi place. Yesterday, she sent me a link to a mother-son therapy retreat. Yeah, that's apparently a thing. The financial stuff is rough. She had to sell a bunch of her jewelry, including stuff my dad gave her, to help pay back my grandparents. She's working doubles at the diner again. I've offered to help with money, but she refuses to take it. Says she needs to fix her own mistakes. Pride's about all she has left, I guess. Speaking of my grandparents, they finally called instead of just sending letters. It was awkward as hell. Lots of crying, them, and uncomfortable silences, me. They kept saying how they should have known better, how they failed as grandparents, the usual guilt trip stuff. I mostly just said a lot and made excuses to hang up. Work is interesting. The whole Jessica scandal actually led to a company-wide audit of the HR department. Turns out she'd been fudging expense reports and stealing corporate credit card info too. Real piece of work. Mark, the marketing guy she cheated with, apparently got demoted and transferred after everything came out. Karma's funny like that. Last week, my mom asked if she could come over just to sit and talk. No agenda, no begging for forgiveness, just talk. I said yes, mainly because I was tired of saying no. She brought photos of my dad she'd found while cleaning, stuff I'd never seen before. We looked through them together and it was nice, normal. For like an hour, it felt like before. But then she started crying again, talking about how she sees now that she was probably overcompensating with Jessica because she wanted me to have a perfect relationship, something she never had after Dad died. How she got so caught up in having a daughter figure that she forgot to be a mother. I just sat there, not really knowing what to say. Here's the weird thing. I'm starting to think my lack of feelings isn't just about being hurt or angry. It's like my brain just shut off that whole emotional connection to protect itself. My therapist, finally started going, says it's a trauma response or something. Cool, cool, cool. Mom's in therapy too. Different therapist, thankfully. She forwards me all her homework assignments like it's proof she's trying to be better. It's kind of sad but also annoying. Like, I get that she's trying to rebuild trust, but sending me screenshots of her therapy journal feels invasive. The hardest part is that I can see she's genuinely destroyed by all this. She's lost weight, barely sleeps, works constantly. The other day, she called just to say she loves me and started crying when I didn't say it back. Not because I don't love her, I do, she's my mom, but because I just couldn't get the words out. I know everyone wants a happy ending here. Like son forgives mom, family healed, roll credits, but real life isn't that simple. We're trying this new thing where we text every few days and maybe get coffee once a week. Baby steps, I guess. The trust might never fully come back. Or maybe it will, who knows? For now, I'm just trying to figure out who I am without being mom's perfect son or Jessica's boyfriend or that guy who got screwed over by everyone. Just me. Edit. To the people asking if I'll ever fully forgive my mom, I honestly don't know, but I'm trying to be open to whatever happens next. Edit 2. Since people keep asking, total damage from Jessica's scam was around $200,000 across all victims. About $40,000 was my mom's life savings. Final edit. Thanks for following this crazy story. Probably won't post updates unless something major happens with the Jessica situation, focusing on therapy and healing and all that good stuff.